The Steelers had their first padded practice, and there were a lot of fireworks. We'll talk about the biggest moments from the offensive line to the defensive line, linebackers, running backs, receivers, corners, everybody on here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. We got Alan Saunders from SteelersNow.com. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things on the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, you can find the show on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoyed. Subscribe to this YouTube channel to get all of your daily Monday through Friday episodes, as well as our bonus content. We thank you for making the Locked On Steelers podcast your first listen every day, because we're your team every day. And today's episode is sponsored by FanDuel Sportsbook, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Make every moment more by visiting FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. And we are joined, as I said before, by Alan Saunders of SteelersNow.com. He's back. And Alan, it was a glorious first day in Pets. But I first want to just thank the God, whoever you praise out there, that is the higher power of this world. It was not even 80 degrees out there, and we didn't get rained on. It was good weather for the first day in Pads.
I don't have them here. You know what though? I bought a new pair of sunglasses. All right, and they're like a little bit of a different, like stylistic choice for me, or brown, maybe like a black guy, a little bit different. And I was like, all right, let's first day in Pads, I'm gonna break out the new sunglasses. And I was like, cloudy.
Okay. It was like completely.
So the God was just me spending $30. Like that's all it was.
That's all it was. But let's get into what we saw here today. First day in Pads. There was a lot of stuff that happened. So for those who don't understand, the Steelers' first week of practice, 4 straight practices of non-pads. Then Tuesday they got into it. We prepped you guys with some of the matchups that we wanted to talk about going into that practice. But ultimately, we see things. First, they come out, they do 7 shots. 7 shots a little different because they're actually going to be able to run the ball. And the defense did win 4-3, but the offense, all 3 of their wins came on the ground. Their first 2 runs, Najee Harris up the middle, touchdowns. And that's first team against first team, full live play like you're in a game. And the offense was able to win it, but the defense was able to win with a breakup with Patrick Peterson on Pat Freiermuth, and then a play where like everyone was covered and Pickett just threw it away. And afterwards, I thought this was really interesting. This is a precursor for something we'll talk about later. But Joey Porter Jr. kind of barking at George Pickens, and Pickens barking back at him because nobody was open, and Porter was kind of talking about that. But the offense, they got all their touchdowns on the ground, and the defense was able to win. But then right after that, you go to backs on backers, and man, was there some fireworks. Chief among them, in my opinion, Darnell Washington gets called out by Mike Tomlin. He says, hey, every time I see 9-0, TJ Watt, I want to see you right over here with him. And I'm like, hey, you putting Darnell up against TJ Watt? That's a little extreme, don't you think? Can he start with like Marcus Golden or Nick Herbig? But nah, he goes up against TJ Watt. And that first rep, he's like, 8-0, 9-0's right here. Let's go. He lines him up, and Darnell Washington stoned TJ Watt, blocked him. And I was like, what? I cursed. Like, I literally was like, oh, bleep, because I'm like, how the heck did that just happen? And then Mike's like, okay, 8-0, every time. And then the next time TJ Watt came up, he said, 8-0, he's over next to me. And then Darnell Washington comes, he blocked him again. Now, I thought the second time he got away with a little bit of a hold. But still, the fact that Darnell Washington was not turned around and spun around and flipped around by TJ Watt, who does that to all pro offensive tackles, was extremely impressive to me. And the way that Mike Tomlin pressed Darnell Washington in that moment, I thought was really cool.
Chris, I say this with zero hyperbole. I've been covering training camp. I think my first one was 2018, like every day since 2019. That's the best I've ever seen anyone block TJ Watt.
Seriously, like I was blown away. Like he
at any position, tackle, tight end, run it doesn't. That was the best I've ever seen anyone block TJ Watt. It was like TJ wasn't trying, but TJ was trying.
He was,
and it was impressive.
I have to say.
I mean, look, I think that Darnell Washington has had a bad start to training camp. Yeah. Like he did not look good in the like passy part.
He wasn't even noticeable.
And when he was noticeable, it was not in a good way. Like when Mason Rudolph, who's been on this team for 5 years, takes a 3-step drop, looks exactly at the spot he wants to throw, leans back and zips it, and it goes by his ear when he's not looking at the ball. I'm like, well, I'm pretty sure it wasn't Rudolph that screwed that up. I don't think he's been very good, but he was incredible today, man. I mean, I talked to Alex Highsmith after practice specifically about that because after he got 2 reps against TJ, then Mike T was like, all right, go to the other side. See what 56 has for you. And I think I would call that rep a win for Highsmith, but he certainly slowed him down. Like it was not a clean win. Now, weirdly, Nick Herbig kind of got him.
Yeah.
But I talked to Alex Highsmith about that, and I was like, so that's like a long way to go around, right? And he was like, oh my God, man, like a long way around.
Yeah.
Right? And he said to me, he's like, I remember the thing, like my first rep was against Vance McDonald, who was the guy who had been there, done that already. He's like, I just love being a part of like that competition. He's like, that's what makes us all better. He's like, doesn't matter like who wins or who loses. Like we'll all remember who won and who lost for like 24 hours and then it all goes away. It's like, but that competition is like what makes this process special. I was like, like dude, that what a great day for Darnell Washington. I'm like, I don't know. It's not going to make him have a great rookie season. It doesn't mean that he's going to be awesome, but man, he showed what we can do in a big way.
He certainly did. Other guys who I thought really shined in backs on backers, Cole Holcomb, who really has shined all camp from what I've seen. He has been all over the place. Looks like every down backer they signed him to be. I thought Mark Robinson looked good, and that's really the element that Mark Robinson should look good in when they're playing run defense. That's where he needs to shine. He got an A for me on the day of first day of pads. I thought he looked really good. I still think he needs to improve his how he plays in the entire game, especially when the pass game gets involved. But he is looking more and more like a legitimate guy to include in a rotation of linebackers, along with the 3 guys they signed in Holcomb, Roberts, and Alexander. I thought Landon Roberts looked solid. I thought Quan, right?
Solid.
Crushed
solid is an understatement. Solid is not enough words. You need.
I agree. I'm not trying to oversell everybody. I thought Nick Herbig looked good. Connor Heyward looked really good. And it was really interesting because when I was talking to Mike Tomlin, I asked Mike Tomlin this. I meant to clip this up, but I didn't include in the show. But I was like, you guys seem to line him up both as a backer and a tight end. Is there a preference to where you guys want him to be? And he's like, we just want versatility. We want him to be successful wherever he lines up. And he was, because he lined up both as a tight end and as a backer on backers, which again, I apologize for explaining this first for the guys, people who are new to this show. Backs on backers, basically a drill where the offense is protecting a fictional quarterback who's kind of just standing there, and the defense
like
is trying
boy's worst day.
Exactly. Yeah, it's just like you are being chased by TJ Watt. Have fun with that. But basically, it's just offense, defense, pass protection. Who wins, and that's all it is. And it can be running back, it can be tight end, but it's skill player versus linebacker, and it gets nasty. Now, because of this, we didn't get to see as much of the offensive line, defensive line matchups, but we're going to get those chances later in training camp. But still, Alan, am I missing anybody else that really had a really big day that you thought with backs on backers? There were certainly others who had their wins. I think Najee Harris and Jalen Warren looked very good as well. They look like Kenny Pickett will have a lot of protection from the running back position this year, but it seemed like this was a good first day in pads overall for the Steelers.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think Landon Roberts, I think he removed parts of John Lovett's soul.
Oh my gosh, that poor, and that was back to back. Lovett lost. He got trucked by Roberts, and then he got trucked by Robinson. And I was like, oh man, that poor young man.
Yeah, yeah, it was hard to watch. Like, okay, here's the thing. Here's the thing about that drill. Right, the drill is backs on backers. The point of the drill is to get the linebacker to hit the running back. Right. So the running backs always get all jacked up for the hit, right? They're gonna like lean into it, right? And then generally, when they look stupid, it's like what Quan Alexander did, where you give them the little head and shoulders, swim move, and then the running back's out of his shoes falling forward, and the linebacker's like, ha, I got you. I don't think I've ever seen a running back just be like, here comes the hit, I'm going to take the hit, and then end up like 9 yards backwards, flipped head over heels, like I saw what Landon Roberts did today. Like, I don't think that Landon Roberts is like an all-pro or anything, but man.
He looks pretty doggone good.
That was a collision.
Yeah.
That was impressive. I thought Nick Herbig really continues to show why the Steelers have faith in him as an edge rusher. I'm not sure what like the world looks like if like he ever has to play more than like 15 snaps a game. But if you need a situational edge rusher, man, he can do that job. He has some moves. Like him and Connor Heyward got into this, like, I think they went 5 reps against each other, I think
so, yeah. I counted, yeah.
And Heyward won the first one pretty easily. Herbig, I think, eventually wins the second one, but it wasn't like super it wasn't super clean. Third one, ghost move, and just I think the clean, like, other than Landon Roberts like lighting a stick of dynamite, that was like the cleanest win of anybody all day, where he was just like gone, not even like didn't even touch him. I just think he's a small guy. I don't know if I have faith in his ability to hold up to a run attack. You know, I wouldn't be like super excited to get him in there against the Ravens. But man, he's got a pass rush skill set that I did not see, that I think makes them committing to him playing edge rusher make a lot more sense to me than it did 2 months ago. And so I think he was a big winner for me, and has been really all throughout camp. Jaylen Warren, there's just something about that man in pass protection that I think it's like the by nature, the defense is the aggressor in that drill. Like they are the one that is delivering the blow, right? It's backs. It's called backs on backers, but really it's backers on backs, right? That's what's really happening. Except when Jaylen Warren's in the game, because he just goes out and finds a way to hit people. It is impressive. It is why he got a chance to run the ball as a rookie. And I think it really, to me, when you put it up, and now I'm really disappointed we didn't see Alfonso Graham in that. Shoulder injury the other day, was one, I think, the most promising of the rookie running backs. But like when you see some of the other rookies go in there now, and you compare them to what Jaylen Warren did last year, it's like, oh, well, this is why he was a dude and these guys are not dudes, right? Like it's right there. Like this is the whole. Everybody can run the ball if there's a hole and if there's time. This is what separates the running backs that get an opportunity from the running backs that don't. I thought Anthony McFarland was very good. He looked professional. He's not the biggest guy. I think he gave up the pressures eventually, but I think he held his own in a way that, like, he's the third running back. There's nobody else. It's clearly him.
It's clearly him. I want to get more thoughts from you here from this practice in a minute. We'll do that in a second here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. But first, I want to talk to you guys about our great sponsors at FanDuel Sportsbook, the best sportsbook in America. Now, FanDuel Sportsbook has a great promotion right now where you can take your first swing at betting on Major League Baseball on FanDuel, and you can get 10 times back your first bet amount in bonus bets up to $200. That's right. If you just bet $20, you'll get $200 back in bonus bets, win or lose, on your first bet when you sign up for FanDuel Sportsbook today. That's $200 you can spend on anything from betting on betting on the money line, over under, to who you think is going to hit the first home run of the game that you're going to watch tonight. All in an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Plus, when you win, you can get paid instantly. There's no better place to bet on Major League Baseball than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Sign up today and visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get signed up and get $200 back in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, official partner of Major League Baseball. Back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, I'm your host, Chris Carter, here with Alan Saunders of SteelersNow.com. Alan, backs on backers is thrilling, and we could talk more about some of the things we saw there, but I think we got to cross the main point, was that certain guys had certain wins. But there was a clear highlight of the day that was not in backs on backers. It was during backs on backers, but it was on another part of the field. And the only reason we even saw it is because it went kind of mini viral on Twitter. and that was George Pickens absolutely mossing Joey Porter Jr. It was filthy, disgusting. First of all, I want to say that I prefaced this for all of you very well, because I told y'all this was going to be the camp rivalry that was going to be the thing to watch. But all throughout the non-padded practices, they've been barking at each other. Porter will get a breakup, Pickens will make a play, and they'll yell at each other a little bit, and they'll go back to their huddles. It's not like they're not swinging on each other or anything like that. But then today, when the pads went on, 7 shots, I think it was the third play of 7 shots, when Kenny Pickett kind of rolls to his right, and he was looking for Pickens, but Pickens was blanketed. And so he couldn't find anybody. He kind of just had to throw it away. And afterwards, Joey Porter was like, just looking at Pickens. And he didn't look like he was even saying much, but he was like, yeah, you know what it is. And Pickens was like, blah, blah, blah. I'll get you on the next one. And so they kind of just went their separate ways. Well, let me tell you that George Pickens got him on the next one, because there was this deep ball that was thrown. If you haven't found it, just look up on Twitter, Pickens and Porter. You'll find it, the full video. I'm not allowed to play practice clips on this show because of copyright rules or whatever with techno. Who knows? But when this ball goes up in the air, first of all, these two are battling every yard down the field. And this may have been like a 40-yard ball or however long it was. It was a deep ball. But like they're battling, hand fighting. Porter's got Pickens, Pickens got Porter. And then when the ball's in the air, they both turn, and Pickens might have gotten, I mean, he certainly had contact, might have been called for OPI, but I think that there was, and that's where I felt, Natalie, you're shaking your head. I felt like there was enough contact for both sides that in the NFL, a real effort.
If anybody, I think the fight had been on Porter.
Right. And that's where I feel like
first.
Yeah, because he initiated the contact, and then Pickens responded. And that's where I felt like it wouldn't have been OPI. But he goes up. I mean, he goes over Porter's back, makes the catch one-handed, comes down, and then like Porter can do nothing but just be like, dang, that happened. And then Pickens gets up and puts the ball in his hands like, here you go. And it was just like, oh. It was
so much about that play I love. The look on Joey Porter's face when he looks down and he sees that Pickens has the ball, like he does like this, like the head on it, like what is he supposed to do? Like what more is he supposed to do? You can't defend that any better than that. Not legally anyway.
Right.
I think the answer is that George Pickens is like illegal and a cheat code or something. But it really, it's funny though, is that you said like, in 7 shots, George Pickens was blanketed. And I think, was he really? Is he ever really?
If Kenny Pickett just threw the ball, maybe we would have seen that
too. Is George Pickens blanketed?
Can you blanket?
How covered could he ever possibly be?
Yeah.
Just always throwing the ball anyway. He's always open, even when he's never open. He caught another one later in the day. I want to say it was in a 7-on-7 or was the team pass?
Yeah.
I can't remember.
It was 7-on-7.
He was double covered in the back of the end zone, and he had 2 guys that were doing a very good job. And one of them was Cole Holcomb, who had covered him down the seam, I guess. The other one, I think maybe was Trey Norwood.
Yeah.
Did a very good job of not committing pass interference, but like forcing him to the end line and just like pushing him back. He jumped like 4 feet in the air and landed with about 3 inches between the defender and the sideline and got his toes down and scored a touchdown. On any other day of any other training camp, basically ever, that would have been the best pass reception anyone had ever seen. And it was like meaningless compared to what had happened 15 minutes beforehand.
It was kind of.
The guy's unreal. He said on a podcast the other day that he is the best receiver in the world. And like, I don't agree with him, but I don't
disagree.
Think that he's not capable of that either. Like he is capable of that.
This is a little different than when Chase Claypool said, I'm a top 5 wide receiver. This is a little different because when that happened, I was like, oh, Chase, maybe we shouldn't go there right now. But when George Pickens says it, I'm like, you're not right now, but you very well could be.
Yeah. And the thing that I don't want to get lost in this is that Joey Porter Jr. is playing really, 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 really well. Like he is, of all the players, compared to the way they were in the spring to how I feel about them right now, I feel like he's the most improved. There were days in the spring where I saw him get beat, and then I had to go look down at my roster to find out which receiver that I did not even recognize was the guy that was beating him. And he has gotten so much better, so fast. And he had an interception today that was phenomenal. ran the route for Cody White, I think it was, against Mitch Trubisky on a fly. He's in his hip pocket.
Bad pass.
In his hip pocket, all the way down the field. Turns, finds the ball, high points. Then he had like a 30-yard return. This is like textbook, like exactly what you want to see from a defensive back. He's playing really, really well. And George is just making him look silly. Like,
it's crazy. It's crazy. I want to play a clip. Here was Joey Porter Jr. from the first day of padded practice, on Tuesday. We talked to him, 1, about how he felt, but 2, about his interception, and then 3, about George Pickens in that play. Here was Joey Porter Jr. talking.
First day in pads and, getting the full workout in.
I mean, it felt great, like Coach G said, we used to do stuff football-like, but today it was straight football, and I felt great, stacking days.
How'd that pick feel?
Felt great to get the first one under my belt at training camp, so we're just going to keep trying to stack them.
Can you walk us through that play? How did you come down with the ball?
Just like everything I used to rep before practice and after practice, locating the ball, coming up with my hands. I've been really working on that, so the fact that it's paying off feels good.
Joe, you're out here afterward talking to Ike Taylor, running stuff with Patrick Peterson. You're getting some pretty big-time tutorials here. How's that working out for you?
I feel like it's working out pretty good. Those guys are trying to give me the game, and I just appreciate them to really looking out because not everybody gets to get that experience, and I'm getting that right now, so I'm blessed.
Joe, you've had some battles with George. What have those battles been like, and how would you describe the back and forth there?
It's been great. Iron sharpened iron. We had a good little one-on-one. He caught some crazy stuff down there. Don't know how he caught it, but it's great. We always going to talk here and there, but we're teammates at the end of the day. We're just working. How
hard is it to keep your cool in those one-on-ones?
It's not too hard because at the end of the day, we know we're teammates, but we want the best at each other. So we're going to talk. We're going to do a little extra here and there, but it's never going to get past that point. Like Coach said, we know we're a professional team, we're not an MMA team, so we're just going to keep it like that.
Did he get away? Did catch, or did he get away with a little something?
I don't even know. I haven't watched the film. I just felt bro on my shoulder. I'm like, where'd the ball go? And then he came down with it. So it was crazy, definitely crazy.
When you're coming off the field, what kind of things is Patrick saying to you? Just is he helping you like almost like after every set, or is he letting you kind of like have your own space at times?
He let me have my own space, but we talk before practice on what we're trying to work on, what we're doing. So he'll tell me a little something like, remember what we talked about before practice, just so I can have that reminder going on the field to look what I'm working for.
I know Corey.
So I think, Alan, it's really cool not just to hear him kind of praise George for beating him and talking trash to him, but also being like, that's just part of the game, and we're making each other better. For a rookie to have that kind of wherewithal, I think that speaks a lot to the maturity that he has, coming into the NFL.
I think it really sort of encapsulates what today is all about for the Steelers, right? I mean, like, it is literally beating the heck out of your brother because you love him. Yeah, like that's what it is. Like we talked about Landon Roberts and laying out John Lovett and those two guys going at it and battling, talking trash. There was a play in I think it was a team drill. Like Trey Norwood just obliterated. I want to say it was like Jamarcus Bradley or somebody on the far side. I mean, it was hard. There were some hard hits out there, and sometimes there's some trash talk. There probably will be a day in this training camp when it gets hot and guys get PO'd and there's some pushing and shoving. And I'll put money now on DeMar and Leal being in the middle of that.
He was talking so much. I want to talk about that too. We're going to get to that in the third segment because the offensive line, defensive line was a lot of fun to watch too.
Like that is what makes these guys better, accountable. Like they love it. This is what they want. They want to be hot and miserable and competitive and physical because that's what they need going into the season. And I think they're really, really delivering on the intensity that is required to make that process work so far.
I agree. I want to talk more about the offense and defensive lines because we've focused a lot on skill players of this, and the whole point of padded practice is to see the big dudes hit. We'll talk about what we saw in a minute here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, here with Alan Saunders. Stick with us. We'll be right back. Back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, I'm your host, Chris Carter, here with Alan Saunders of SteelersNow.com. Alan, so the offensive line versus defensive line happened. Now, I want to also specify a lot of us were paying attention to backs on backers for that. And while backs on backers is happening, it's offensive line versus defensive line, while also Joey Porter Jr. and George Pickens and the receivers and corners are duking it out. So there's so much to watch. There's only so many things that we can witness all at one time. So we did not get to see, most of us did not get to see individuals. But I will say the offensive line looked good in 11 on 11. In 7 on in 9, so you can't be 7 on 7, but in 7 shots, and 11 on 11, they moved the first team defensive line. I mean, they looked impressive. There were some runs that Najee Harris got off. Jalen Warren was getting off. I thought they looked good, and I'll say also Jim Wexell, guy from 24/7 Sports. He's been on this show. We love Jim. He's awesome. He knows his stuff. He told me in a word when I asked him how Broderick Jones looked in individuals. He said Broderick Jones looked fantastic, and he looked pretty good in 11 on 11. They put him up against Highsmith, and he didn't put Highsmith today. He went up against Golden and a few other guys, but each time he looked right in there. Didn't look, he was right in line. He was not becoming a problem, and he was looking pretty solid for them. And I thought he had a good first day in pads, especially if he looked quote unquote fantastic. And Jim is also a guy, he's been on this show saying that he doesn't think that Broderick Jones will take Dan Moore's job this year as a rookie. So for Jim to say that, I think that speaks highly of what Broderick Jones looked like this week. But Alan, what was your impression of how the offensive line and defensive lines mixed it up on Tuesday?
I think from the offensive line perspective, the thing that stood out to me was this is the first time I really noticed Isaac Seumalo.
Yeah.
And how good he is. There was a run in team period. Jalen Warren broke one, probably the longest run of the day. May have been like 25, 30 yards off the left-hand side. It was a kick-out block from Seumalo that really springs the whole thing. Pat Freiermuth got free in the second level and blocked Landon Roberts into TJ Watt's pursuit path. It was really just like 2 really good blocks that springs the whole thing. I think to me, that's like really what this offensive line was missing last year. Is it wasn't that like the pieces were just so bad that they weren't ever able to do their job, but they were just missing that one guy that could be like, I got it. Like here we go. Like, get behind me. Let's go. And I think Isaac Seumalo can be that guy. And Broderick Jones is a really good run blocker already. I was not surprised to see him do well in that regard. I'm a little more. I think there will be a more learning curve for him in terms of pass protection. I did not get to see that drill either, but I was not surprised to see him running. But he was that guy for the second team line. Like I felt like they had guys that would just. Sometimes you just need that one big block. I think the big thing that's missing from the Steelers running game are explosive runs. Like everybody gets stopped in the backfield sometimes. Everybody has those like boring 3-yard carry runs. Like the thing that separates a team that runs the ball at 3.9 yards per carry versus a team that runs the ball at 4.2 yards per carry is like 5 plays a year that go for 25 yards.
Mm-hmm.
That's the difference. And they have not had those. And I really thought that Isaac Seumalo stood out to me as a guy that was making those blocks that do more than just his job, but really open up a play and allow the defense to be exploited. On the other side of the ball, I thought 2 guys really stood out to me were Kiana Benton, who was the first time look, I'll be perfectly honest. Like when there's no pads on, I am not paying that much attention to what a nose tackle is doing.
Right.
Like I'm just not. Like it's not that important.
Right.
I really watched him a little bit more closely today, and I was very impressed by what I saw. I thought Isaiah Loudermilk had a very solid day as well. Mm-hmm. Cam Heyward and Larry Ogunjobi just do not they're not going to practice all day. Those are older, been there.
They know what they're doing.
Right. And so if they're able to cycle through, I thought Braden Fehoko, to me, he's a guy that I'm not, like, he's not going to be explosive. He's not going to be stats heavy ever, probably. But man, he eats up space.
Good run defense.
He eats up space. Like you just can't.
Mm-hmm.
It's like how you draw the football plays and you have like X's and then you have O's, and that man's like a giant rectangle.
Big X. Just like
he's like a whole box where it's just like, don't go here.
Don't go here. But I felt like the defensive line, There were certain guys on the inside. Benton. There were a couple of times where like they tried to double team him, and there were a couple of times like I think it was Nate Herbig got him out of the hole a little bit. But there were plenty of times where they double teamed him and he didn't go nowhere. And that made it easy for the linebacker behind him to make plays. And that's what Braden Fehoko does very well. So I'm with you. Like Keanu Benton was one of the quieter guys in the first week of camp, but naturally so, because what the heck is he going to do when no pads were on? But with the first day on in pads, I thought he looked solid. And that's not to say that the guys in the offensive line didn't look solid who were trying to block him. I think it was just a good competitive spirit out there between all the Steelers and everything. And I think I think this was the kind of first day of practice that you wanted to see, both sides winning, both sides being aggressive and setting a tone and setting the tone like, hey, the Steelers, they wanted to be the more physical team on the field this season with whoever they face. And if today holds up as far as how the progress that this team is going to make in this training camp, I think they're going to be able to attack with that kind of persona.
Yeah, I agree. And the other thing, also all this is all tied together, but I really thought this was the first time that we saw some play action from that offense. And
good point.
If they can run the ball, like there were some open guys.
Yep.
And because even the Steelers defense was like, you're allowed to do that? You can
run
the ball.
Where'd that come from?
And then you can throw it? Really? That's they never did that before, Coach. What?
It's like they figured it out.
And so we saw that a couple times. There was one like Cody White was just there wasn't a guy within maybe 15 yards of him.
Yeah.
There was another one where Gunner was very open. I think that if they can have success, they don't need a ton more success. They just need to have a little bit more success in the running game. I really think that'll open play action for them. I think it gives them, the opportunity to do a bunch of different things that we haven't really seen from them. But man, that was very, it's a great time to do it if you're the offensive coordinator. Everybody knows it's first day in pads. Everybody knows you're going to try to run the ball a lot more. But like, man, there was just some open guys and play action.
I agree. And again, that's the balance that the Steelers are looking for. Win in the run, win at the line of scrimmage, and then it forces other players to have to focus more on it. And then it opens up other things. And then when they're having to worry about the big play behind them, then they're going to be a little bit more hesitant to come up and stuff the run. And then you have that balance of we can beat you both ways. That's what they've been missing. That's what they've been wanting. That's why they invested into this offensive line. That's why they look better. I'll finish on this point, Alan. We talked about three different phases. We talked about backs on backers. We talked about corners and wide receivers, and we talked about offensive linemen. Three key stars here. Georgia, and Georgia. Darnell Washington, George Pickens, and Broderick Jones. And I don't think that is a coincidence that on the first day of pads, all three of them dudes were stars.
I don't think it's a coincidence. And, just see. Mike Tomlin's daughter, where is she going to school? Where did she commit on a gymnastics scholarship? Oh, that's Georgia, right? So I think he got some more than coming.
I think he's more than happy to have that kind of a connection. He has to be. I don't know how Mike Tomlin thinks. I don't know if he told his daughter where to go. But when we saw that on the interwebs,
I'm sure he was not upset about it.
Right. He was like, I'll take some free trips to Georgia to see the best team in football right now. But point being, those guys thrived on the first day of pads. And they weren't the only ones. We talked about all the other people here, but I think it's really cool to see them. And they're all part of the youth movement the Steelers are trying to do right now. Two rookies in Jones and Washington, and your second-year star wide receiver in Pickens, who I think is getting ready to be a monster that teams will not like to have to deal with when they face the Steelers this season. He's Alan Saunders of SteelersNow.com. This is the Locked On Steelers podcast. Alan, thanks so much for joining us here on the show. Let people know they can find you, follow you, and get more of your work.
At @Saunders_PGH on Twitter, at PGH Steelers Now, SteelersNow.com. And you can also check out my podcast, which is new. And we're going to have Carter on there at some point. But me and Zachary Smith.
What's taking so long?
It's been a week, bro.
It's been a week.
We'll get you on. Me and Zachary Smith from around the 412 doing that in the afternoon. So wake up in the morning, get your coffee, check out Locked On with Chris Carter, go to work, pretend to work for most of your day while you're reading stuff at SteelersNow.com. Exactly. And then in the afternoon, come check out Steelers Afternoon Drive with me and Smitty. and you'll have a great day.
You will. It's a great job, and we love Smitty. We're glad to see him on y'all's team because Smitty's a good dude and he knows his stuff. He knows ball. Thanks so much, Alan, for joining us here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter of the Locked On Steelers podcast. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Carter Critiques. Read my work at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, where Pitt training camp starts up today on Wednesday. So we're going to be there with myself and Noah Hiles covering that for the Post-Gazette. You can get all that coverage at post-gazette.com. You can also find me on the North Shore Drive podcast. We'll have Jerry Dulek on the Wednesday episode, so that'll be a special treat. And you can find me here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, Monday through Friday, your favorite podcasting app, and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to this channel to get more episodes every single day, as well as our bonus content like we did this past weekend. We were talking about what we saw in practice. Also, remember, you can always, if you want to support the show, you can go to Apple Podcasts, rate us 5 stars with a positive comment. You do both at the same time. You get a special shout out at the end of the show. Like this person, we've got Hello Boy BRB, who says, great show, 5 stars. Listen to every episode. Great show. Thank you so much for your 5-star review. If you got one for us, hit us up on Apple Podcasts. Give us that review. You will get a shout out at the end of the show. And also, just a reminder, we are running out of time on this fundraising effort. We have till the end of September, but please donate to the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation under the link that we've provided in this podcast. There's a QR code on your screen right now if you're looking on YouTube, and there's also a link that is attached in the description of this podcast, whether you're listening on audio or watching on YouTube. Or if you just want the link, hit up my Twitter page. That's where you can find it. If you want, I can send it to you. Just click on that link, donate anything you can. And if you donate $10 with with your question, you'll get your question answered right here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. So thanks to everyone who's already contributed. We've already raised a good amount of money. We want to keep going. We got goals to reach there. Thanks again, Alan. Thanks again, you all, for listening. We're back Thursday talking Pittsburgh Steelers and getting you more ready for the end of the week here as we see them in more padded practices. Remember, Friday Night Lights is coming up at the end of this week. We'll get you excited for that as well. Stick with us here on the Locked On Steelers podcast.